welcome back. Today, I wanted to talk about some of the books that were on my TBR from old videos. Did not read like close to that whole list like at all. I read I read a decent amount, but it was nowhere near the like 80 books that I had on those previous lists. So I'm going to go over the ones that I did read, the ones that I liked, the ones that I did not, and we'll just talk a little bit about that and get you all caught up to where I am now. And yeah, so let's jump right into it. Okay, so I'm going to start off really strong. Since the last time I made a video, or since, before the break that I took, essentially, I believe I had read Ship of Magic and was getting ready to read Mad Ship by Robin Hobb. Since then, I have, finished all of them, and these books were absolutely insane. I was a huge Robin Hobb fan going into it. I had read the first Assassin's trilogy. I always forget what it's called because, like, all of her books are called Assassin something. The Farseer trilogy, the first one there. So I was already a Robin Hobb fan going into this, and I hesitated to read them because I'm not a huge fan of pirates, like, as a theme, or I knew it was heavily focused on boats, and my boyfriend always makes fun of me for this, but I am not a huge fan of boats, like, in books. Like, if I know that it takes place mostly on a boat, I'm immediately not that interested in it. So I hesitated on these books a little bit, but I wanted to read all of Robin Hobb's. I knew I wanted to read the whole series, and it was recommended that you read these. I know you can read them as a standalone, you don't have to read them in order, but knowing that the worlds are all interconnected, I wanted to read them as they're meant to be read, and these are meant to be read directly after the Farseer trilogy, so that's what I did. And I picked up the first one, and I was like, oh, I don't need to worry about the fact that boats is a theme, because her books are so good, the writing is so good, that I was immediately obsessed, and the first book was amazing. And I have seen some people say that they didn't like the following books as much. I don't agree at all. I thought they were all absolutely fantastic. And honestly, I liked them better than the Farseer trilogy. I didn't expect that at all, but I did. I thought they were more engaging and faster pace, and I loved that there were multiple perspectives, and just thematically, I feel like with all of Robin Hobb's writing, the strong theme is identity. Who are you? What is it about life that, like, makes you who you are, losing your identity, gaining your identity, consciousness, so on and so forth. So that theme is very strong in these books as well. So you're not just getting like, oh, this is just a fantasy story out of it. Robin Hobb does an amazing job at writing books that have this deep, deep emotional, spiritual meaning within them, without it being a slog or being too on the nose. It's just woven in such a way that it's just amazing storytelling. And my boyfriend actually he was the one that turned me on to Robin Hobb. He has read the entire series except for the live ship traders. And I'm so upset by that. I tell him all the time that I am so disappointed that he didn't read them, and I keep telling him, you have to read them, you have to read them. And he's like, oh, well, I've already finished the series, like, I don't know, maybe someday. And I keep being like, there are so many things I want to talk to him about, because he is familiar with the world, and has read all of the other ones, but I don't want to spoil it because I do want him to read them. So it drives me absolutely crazy. So if you are a Robin Hobb fan, I am desperate for you to read these books. Having gone to school for English literature, a big part of me wants to immediately just like analyze everything about them and talk about the intricate characters. So there will probably be a video at some point. I've been wanting to make one basically since I read these about, Robin Hobb's character development and storytelling. But in order to do that, there obviously will be spoilers. So I beg all of you to read these books so that you can watch that video with me at some point, and so we can talk about it, because these books are truly amazing in a way that I didn't expect, and I am so glad that I read them. And part of me, as much as I love Fitz and the main character of, all of the Assassins books, which I also was surprised to learn that a lot of people don't like him. People call him pathetic, and I think that's probably for another video at another time, but I was very surprised by that, because I think even though, like, he's mopey at times, like, those first couple of books, he's a teenager and, like, a child, and he doesn't know his place in the world, and he at times feels like he has no one, and feels unsupported, and is going through these horrible events, and so when you're that age, like, of course you're gonna feel that way. I'm getting too in the weeds there, but I was very surprised to hear people say that about Fitz. That being said, despite loving him as a character and following his journey, I loved that there were multiple perspectives in these books. It kept it really fresh, and every time I'd get to the end of a chapter, sometimes with the Farseer trilogy, I would get to the end of a chapter and be like, that was really dense, that was a lot, and I'm ready to take a break, because you're just following one character, essentially. So, but with these books, because there are multiple perspectives, I would often get to the end of a chapter and be like, that was a lot, I need to take a break, but then see who the next perspective was and be like, oh, I can't take a break, I have to know right now, like, what is going on with these characters. So it was really great in that way and kept me moving right along. I've heard people say that the second book, Mad Ship, I forget which one is which, I've heard people say that Mad Ship is slow. I don't really agree. I have a Robin Hobb tattoo, to be completely honest. I love her so much, and her writing just ticks off every box I'm looking for, essentially. So I am going to be obviously not going to accept, like, any criticism of her writing, and I know that people have critical opinions of her, and that is valid, and I get it. There are lots of authors that people love that I don't like, and I have criticism of, and they won't accept it. I understand, but it's hard for me to accept, because I love her so much, that people thought this book was slow. I don't know what they could possibly be referring to. I just love her writing style. If you were a person who doesn't like slow burn, doesn't like slice of life, that sort of thing, then yeah, there are times when these books are slow. I never found them not entertaining, and they're always worth a read in the end because of how emotionally gripping they are, and what they say about the human condition. I was always taught that it is important in writing to think about what your story says about the human condition, and Robin Hobb says so much in such a beautiful way that it's always worth reading. I could talk about Robin Hobb for 100 years, and I'm probably going to make lots more videos about her. She's my favorite all time. So I don't agree. If you like Robin Hobb, I don't think you'll have any problem with the second book. And then, the third book, Ship of Destiny, fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I have zero complaints. It comes to this epic conclusion that is literally epic. amazing, fantastical, and leaves you off in such a perfect way for the Rainwild Chronicles, which I'm very excited to get to. I'm not there yet. I still have the Fool's Assassin trilogy. I forget, the ones after these. I have to get to those ones first, but then I'm very excited to see where the Rainwild Chronicles goes. But these are amazing books, and I want everyone to read them, and I will forever sing their praises. I will move on now, but these are books that were on my TBR, or at least the last two were, and I read them, and I loved them, and I have zero regrets about them, and so I feel like I spent most of the following year after I made those videos reading these, and I don't regret it. It took me a while because I savored it and I wasn't pushing myself to get through books. I was just enjoying it, and it was great, and no regrets. Okay, so for the next book from my TBR, I want to talk about Magician Apprentice by Raymond E. Feist, because I did really enjoy this one. This book does not have a ton of character depth, but it has enough, and it has a really entertaining, really fast-paced story. I know that a lot of the times now this book is sold just as Magician. It's technically two books. I do think that if you like it, you should just buy both if you're not buying one that is just, an edition of Magician, because this book, from what I understand, when it was originally published, was supposed to be published as one book, but the publishers were afraid that people wouldn't buy it because of how chunky it would be. So they literally just split it in half. And I kid you not, both books are the exact same page length, and they literally just cut it in half. So when I got to the end of this book, I was like, oh wow, no, you really do need to read the second one. Because what happens at the end of this book is such a jarring cliffhanger that you're left without answers that you really have to know, or you really want to know. So I did get the second one. To be honest, didn't make it all the way through. I made it about halfway. So without spoilers, I will say that I have a problem in books where characters start telling really long stories about history, or the author starts talking about history for a really long time. That is the easiest way for me my attention span to just go away. I can't stand that. So there's a part of this book where the main character starts thinking about or talking about the history of the world forever. And I bounced off of it. I literally put it down and just was like, I'll come back to this, and I don't think I just never did. So I had this problem. The fourth Game of Thrones book, I forget which one it was, Sword something, I don't know. It was a while ago. I don't remember what the fourth one is called, but I remember specifically it was the fourth one. It had a green cover, if that tells you anything. Jaime Lannister is telling a story to Brienne about his family history, and he's talking about wars and his uncles who were knights and down through the line. And I was like, oh my god, I can't, because my brain doesn't really absorb that. You can tell me this fictional world history all day long, and when I get to the end of that chapter, by the next day, when I go back to read, I'll have forgotten 90% of that, because I'm not interested. That way of talking about it does not interest me. The way I will remember a fantasy history is if it's sprinkled throughout. I can do a couple paragraphs of history, but it's better for me if it's within dialogue between characters. I do not do well with blocks of text about history. So that is always been a problem. So when I was reading that fourth Game of Thrones book, I literally put it down for a full calendar year and then picked it back up and just skipped the rest of the story that Jaime Lannister was telling, and then went on and enjoyed the rest of the book. And so when I got to that part in this book, they're going on and on and on about world history, real or imagined, I don't know. It's sort of like a fantastical scene. I put it down and didn't finish it. That being said, I may go back to it. I do kind of feel bad that I didn't finish it because I enjoyed this one so much. So I read this in like 2 days, 3 days, because it's very fast-paced and very interesting. It reminded me of Lord of the Rings in all the best ways possible. They are, this group of friends on this adventure. There's this world, or in their world, there is this dark atmosphere of like war and like bad things happening that is pushing them forward. And where the plot goes is really great. This is definitely more of a plot-driven story, which I sometimes can have a hard time with, as I will tell you about later in this video. But I liked this one a lot. Even though I felt like the characters could be a little more fleshed out, they had enough characterization and like interesting things happening that I could read this no problem and really enjoy it. So I did really enjoy this one, so I may go back to this one at some point. But yeah, I thought this first one was great and would definitely recommend it. So I'm glad that it was on my TBR, and I'm glad to have finished it. Okay, so the next one I want to talk about was from my medieval romance TBR list. Because I love medieval writing so much, or writing about the medieval era, sometimes it can be hard to find new books to read because, not that many people are writing medieval fiction necessarily. And I thought, there are so many medieval romances out there. Like, I like a romance now and again. Like, maybe that's something that I could get into. So I picked up a bunch of like medieval themed romance books for pretty cheaply, like a couple dollars a piece. And one of them was A Kingdom of Dreams by Judith McNaught. I really liked this book at first. There were a lot of things about it that I enjoyed. The writing I thought was actually pretty good. It was better than I expected. And I liked the character descriptions. I liked the building of their character arcs. That being said, I had a big problem with the way the male love interest spoke about the female love interest. So basically, the female love interest is kidnapped by the male love interest. So he kidnaps her and is traveling with her, and they are like having sex and like making out, and he's feeling her up, and she is like oftentimes doing it because she feels pressured. At one point her sister is ill and she sleeps with him because she thinks that, or it's like a distraction, and she thinks that if she does that, he'll be more likely to help her sister, so on and so forth. So a lot of times, even though she's like into it, a lot of times it feels like she just is doing it because she feels pressured too. And which is not a great vibe, not into that. And then the love interest, the man, is always referring to her as a woman child because she is 17, I believe, and he is supposed to be 35. So it's weird. It's really weird, and I know that times were different in the medieval era, and that probably wouldn't be nearly as looked down upon as it is now. And I probably could have gotten over it if they had a better relationship, like if they were just like really into each other and there was no like pressured aspect of it. And if he didn't keep referring to her as a child, he keeps bringing it back up. Like, just when you forget, like, oh, she's, like, much younger than him, and, you know, to our societal norms, not of legal age, like, as soon as you sort of start to put that in the back of your mind, you're reminded of it because he's referring to her as a child. Did not like that at all. Not a fan. I actually DNF'd it. I didn't finish it because I just couldn't take it anymore. And to be honest, I have no intentions of reading a more medieval romance. Romance has just never been my thing. I thought I might get enjoyment out of it being medieval themed. That didn't really hold up. It wasn't worth it to read this. I do have one or two that seem like it's more about a story than it is the romance aspect, and it seems that the characters are all, you know, 30s, late 20s, 30s. So I might try out one or two of those at some point, but to be honest, like, romance just really isn't my thing, and I have so many other books that I want to read that I am not going to promise that I will ever read those. I was very disappointed in this because I was really enjoying it at first, but like I said, I couldn't get over the fact that she was that much younger than him, and he kept calling her a child. So, like, even in his mind, she was a child, right? Like, if the societal norm is that, you know, she's an adult in medieval era, he is still thinking of her as a child. So it's not like, oh, this young woman. He's literally calling her a woman child, and it was just bad. It was really bad. I'm sorry. The writing was actually pretty good. I just hated that aspect of it. Yeah, so I wouldn't recommend it. But she seems like a pretty good writer. I don't know if there are other books. This is the only book I've ever read by her. So I don't know if there are other books that, you know, are about fully consensual legal adults that are good. It's very possible, but this one, just not for me, not a recommendation. So I learned something, and that is to avoid medieval romance, at least for now. Okay, so this last book that I want to talk about from my previous TBR, I think is going to probably ruffle some feathers because I didn't like it, and that is Eye of the World, the first in the Wheel of Time. I can understand why people like it. It does have an interesting plot, and I can see how people sort of relate it to, like, things like Lord of the Rings, where there is this dark overtone and an evil force, and it's these young characters who are fighting their way through the world and, you know, trying to figure out what's going on. That being said, I felt like it lacked a lot of character depth. A lot of the characters seem very similar to each other because you don't get much from them. The main character, I think his name is Tam is the dad. I don't even remember. See, that's how much I loved it. The main boy character he's very wet towel, I guess. Like, there's nothing much to him. At least I didn't think so. I felt like there could be a lot more character building going on. You know, it's nice that he works really hard to save his dad, and then is worries about his friends, and there's just, like, isn't a lot to his personality. And I felt like there wasn't really much to a lot of people's personalities in the book. So because of that, I didn't really connect to any of them or latch onto characters. And as I've said before, I'm very character driven. That's what I want out of the books. I want in-depth look at their characters. I care about the plot because of the characters. So, for example, the Ken Follett novels that I've read, Pillars of the Earth, is about a man who wants to build a cathedral, and the whole book is him building a cathedral. And I'm able to read that because the characters are good, and it's a look at who they are. I could read a book about a guy sitting in a room for the entirety of the book if it's really in-depth look at his character. So I'm not a hugely plot-driven sort of person in that way, and so this book ended up feeling like, at a certain point, like just like a list of scenes, like this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and I was just like, I just don't care anymore. So by the time I got to the end, I was bored. And there is this sort of epic conclusion that happens, and, you know, it's life or death, and the characters are all, you know, there together and whatever. It's a very fantasy epic conclusion, and I just didn't care. I was just bored because I didn't feel connected to any of it. I didn't really care if any of them lived or died. So I know a lot of people love this book. So many fantasy booktubers talk about how great this is. It's always on top 10 books of the year, top 10 books of all time, and I'm just not that kind of reader. It's not for me. I'm not going to read any more of these. There are definitely characters that I found really interesting in it, but they didn't really go into depth about them. I was just interested in them because they were like unique on a surface level. They were, I mean, I'd say the first half of the book, I was pretty invested. I liked what was going on. It was entertaining, but at a certain point, I was just like, there's also like a cycle of events that seem to keep happening. Like they escape, and then the bad guys show up, and they escape, and then the bad guys show up, and they escape, and it just felt like just too repetitive and too much where it's just like, oh, one scene of things happening after the other, and no real character depth. So not a huge fan. Like I said, if you like, even though I'm a Lord of the Rings fan, I think if you like Lord of the Rings, you probably will like this. It's probably hard to parse, but I think part of the reason I like Lord of the Rings so much is because the movies influenced me on such a great degree. So I'm more invested in those stories. I think if I had read them without having seen the movies, I might not be as invested in those books. I might not like them as much. I might feel the same way. So that being said, if you are a person who likes Lord of the Rings, somebody who is very plot driven, it doesn't really matter that much how much character development they go into. As long as it's a good plot, you will probably love these books. And I understand why people do love them, but it was just not for me. And if you were a person who really wants that character development like I am, you probably won't like them either. So I am glad that I read it, because now I know for sure, and I won't be reading any more of them. Hello again. This is me from the future. I'm filming my next video right now, and I realized that in my last video I was talking about Eye of the World in my last video, and I meant to talk about, so when I mentioned that I didn't like the character development, part of that I wanted to mention was also the female characters, and I forgot to add this point. So basically, an issue I had was that all the male characters seemed like fairly lacking in personality. Like they had some characteristics that I was like, oh yeah, this character, you know, I recognize that they do this thing or they have this aspect of themselves, but felt like sort of bland. Like there could have been more character building going on. The female characters, I felt like the author was trying to write a progressive female character because they're all very like confident and headstrong and sassy, but they all end up being clones of each other. Obviously there are some differences between them, but they all feel very cookie cutter in the sense that they're all very similar. So they don't really have personality either. Like they have a personality, but all of their personalities are like the same. It almost felt like the author was just like, oh, this is just what women are like. So I see people complain a lot about like authors writing bad female characters. I've not really run into any book specifically that it stood out to me as, oh, this author like can't write a woman. I've never really felt that way. But when I read these books, I was like, I feel like the author was trying to write women in a cool, unique way and just sort of failed and made them all very similar. So that was part of the reason I wasn't a huge fan. I wanted them to be more unique, but I just wanted to add that in there because it was an important point that I wanted to make. It was part of the reason the book was like soured for me a little. So yeah, so I mean, let me know if you agree with that or not. Maybe there were aspects of their character that I just missed, but you know, let me know your thoughts. I'm obviously willing to share some unpopular ones, so you know, feel free to fight me on it. Back to the normal video. All right, so that was my list of the books that I read in my absence. There were a lot more, but those are the ones that were on my TBR from the past videos. I am going to talk to you about some more books that are very popular reads that I tried reading in the past year or so, that I DNF'd for various reasons. But we will talk about that. And thanks for coming back. I'm really enjoying doing this. During the time when I was gone, I wanted to do it a lot. And I kept thinking, like, I can't do it because it's so much like work to do, aside from, you know, my regular work, and like I don't have time, and it seems like a whole hassle. But now that I'm doing it, I'm not feeling that way. It's funny too because I decided that I'm not going to like focus on like production value. Like before, I was trying to like think of an outfit and decorate the room that I was in and make sure that there were books behind me and have great lighting and all of these things. And I've decided that if I'm going to be consistent with this, I have to sort of cut back on how much time it takes me. So I was like, you know, screw it. I'll just go outside and film with just the camera and the tripod. And that has been much better as far as actually, you know, wanting to do it and not feeling like bogged down by it or like it was a hassle. So I have been really enjoying this, and I hope that you're enjoying watching these videos and that you'll continue to join me in the future. Hopefully you're not too upset by the books that I didn't like, but you know, we all have our opinions, and I'll probably upset some more people with my future video about the ones that I DNF'd because they're all very popular. But I will talk to you about why. I have lots of reasons. I've read many books in my life, and I have reasons that I love or hate a writing style, and I'll talk to you about what that is. But for now, I am really grateful to the people who have been commenting and liking the videos and just watching it in general. I am surprised that after all this time and having had such a small following, that anyone cares, that anyone is left to witness the videos. But I'm just going to keep making them because I really enjoy doing this. This is something that, you know, reading and analyzing books with people is something I did in college, and I really miss that. Being able to talk about the books that you love and the characters and all of that. So I'm glad to be back, and I'm just going to keep making these videos and hope that more people will come in and watch it and discuss. And but I'm very thankful that there are people who are doing it right now, and I'm I think it's awesome, and I'm glad to be here. So thanks so much, and I will see you next time.